There's a sound a house makes at night that you learn to ignore. The settle of old wood, the wind finding a gap in the boards. And then there's the other sound, the one that stops you halfway up the stairs, candle in hand, because it came from a room you know is empty. In the winter of 1817, on a farm in northern Tennessee, a family began hearing that other sound. First it was knuckles on the outside walls. Then it was something dragging a chain across the floor. Then it was the sound of a large animal gnawing at the foot of a child's bed, in the dark where there was no animal. They searched the house every night. They never found anything. And then, after 3 years of this, one of them would be dead, and the thing in the walls would take the credit. So here is what makes this one different from every other haunted house story you've heard. Most ghost stories are quiet. A shape in a doorway, a cold spot. This one talked, it sang, it quoted scripture, it knew your secrets, and it said them out loud in front of company. Dozens of people, neighbors, strangers, allegedly a future president of the United States, sat in that farmhouse and had conversations with something they could not see. The question isn't just, was it real? The question is, where did it actually come from? Because when you dig past the legend, The Bell Witch isn't a story about a ghost. It's a story about a family, a feud, and a book that was written 70 years too late. Let's exhume it. Man at the center of it, John Bell. He was a farmer, and by the standards of the Red River settlement, a successful one. Land, crops, a wife named Lucy, and a house full of children. He had come to Tennessee for the reason everyone came to Tennessee, to be left alone and to prosper. For a while, he did both. The Bell farm sat near a bend in the river, backed by woods and a shallow cave in the limestone. This is farm country in the 1810s, meaning once the sun goes down, the dark is total. No town glow on the horizon, no neighbor's window, just the black and the sounds in it, and whatever your own mind does with both. That's the world this begins in. Remember it, because everything the family experienced, they experienced in that dark, and the dark is very good at lending its own weight to things. It started outside. A strange dog on the property, a bird too large to name on a fence post, small wrongness, the kind of thing you mention at dinner and then forget. Then it came inside. The knocking started on the walls, from the outside, a hard, deliberate rapping that stopped the instant John Bell opened the door to an empty yard. Then it moved indoors, bed covers pulled slowly to the floor by nothing, the sound of something heavy padding across the room, and then, the detail that curdles it, the family began waking to the feeling of their hair being pulled, hard enough to lift them off the pillow. It concentrated on one person more than any other, Betsy, John Bell's young daughter. Betsy Bell took the worst of it. She was slapped by unseen hands hard enough to leave prints on her cheek. She was pinched until she bruised. Whatever it was, it had chosen her. And it was cruel about it in a way that felt, and this is what frightened the family most, personal. Word spread the way it does. Neighbors came to sit up through the night and witness it, half to help and half for the story. And that is when the thing did something no respectable haunting is supposed to do. It started to speak. Faint at first, a whisper on the edge of hearing, like the wind through the gap in the boards. Then clearer. Then a full voice in the room that could sing hymns, recite sermons word for word from services held miles away, and worst of all, repeat back the private business of everyone present. Who was in debt, who had lied, who had been where they shouldn't. They asked it, of course, the only question that mattered. What are you? And over the months, it gave them several different answers. That's the first crack in the story. Hold on to it. Ask a haunting what it is and you expect one answer. The Bell Witch gave a rotating cast of them. It said it was a spirit of a person buried nearby, whose grave had been disturbed. It said it was nothing and everything, and then it settled on the answer that stuck. It claimed to be the witch of a living neighbor, a woman named Kate Batts. And here is where the ghost story sprouts a very human root. Kate Batts and John Bell had a history, a business dispute, the kind of sour deal over land and property that in a small settlement doesn't fade, it festers. So when the tormenting voice announced itself as Kate's witch, sent to ruin John Bell and to make sure his daughter Betsy never had a happy day, the neighbors nodded. Of course, it made a terrible kind of sense. Every settlement had its feud. This one just happened to have a voice. The voice went to work on Betsy's happiness with real intent. Betsy was engaged to a young man named Joshua Gardner. They were, by every account, in love. And the witch would not allow it. It begged, it threatened, it screamed through the house whenever the marriage was mentioned, until the pressure simply became unbearable and the engagement broke. The voice had reached into a real girl's life and taken something from it. And then it turned back to John Bell himself. His health began to fail. His face would seize, his tongue would swell so he couldn't eat or speak. He'd get better, and then worse, in cycles that no one could explain. The voice narrated the whole decline with open glee. It promised it would see him dead. On a December morning in 1820, John Bell was found in a deep stupor he would not wake from. Beside the bed, someone found a small vial of dark liquid that no one in the family recognized. According to the legend, they tested it on the cat. The cat died. And the voice filled the house, delighted, and said, "I gave old Jack a dose of that last night, and that fixed him." John Bell died that day. So that's the legend, a family, a feud, a voice in the walls, and a death it claimed as its own. Often called the only case in American history where death was blamed on a spirit. But you came here for the origin, so let me show you the scene. Almost everything you just heard, the voice, the vial, the words at the deathbed, comes down to us through one book. It was published in 1894. That's more than 70 years after John Bell died. 70 years for a story to be told and retold across a settlement, to grow a voice, to grow a name, to grow a president into its audience. 70 years is long enough for everyone who was actually in that house to be dead and unable to disagree. And when you look at who's left in the story, a quieter shape appears. There was a schoolteacher in the settlement, a man named Richard Powell, who taught Betsy Bell. Years after the haunting, after Joshua Gardner was driven off by the screaming in the walls, Betsy married him. I'm not going to tell you what that means. The honest answer is no one can. Maybe it means nothing, but it's the kind of detail a ghost has no reason to arrange, and a living, clever, patient person might. Because here's the thing the voice never quite admitted through all its answers. Every single thing the Bell Witch did, the knocking, the whispers, the secrets said out loud, the wrecked engagement, every one of those is something a person can do. A person who knew the house, a person who knew the family, a person with a reason. The Bell Witch didn't survive 200 years because it was a ghost. It survived because we were never able to prove it wasn't one of us. That's what I love about this one. Strip away the voice and the vial, and you're left with something that's honestly more unsettling than a haunting. A whole community that sat in a dark farmhouse, night after night, and could not tell the difference between a spirit and a neighbor with a grudge. Maybe John Bell was poisoned. Maybe he was just a sick man in an age with no medicine, and a story grew up around him because his family needed the dark to have a name. 200 years later, we still can't say. And the not knowing is the whole point. That's why we're still telling it. If you enjoyed this one, hit like and subscribe, because the next legend we exhume is one people are still afraid to say out loud, and I want you to be here when we open it. I'll see you then.